My name's Helen Mort. I'm a poet, and at the moment I'm a Douglas Castor Cultural Fellow at the University of Leeds, and I was asked to write some new poems in response to the British Art Show 8 while it's here in Leeds. It's been really interesting writing the poems because although I haven't had any involvement with the artists, I actually came to look round the British Art Show way before I knew I was going to write any responses to it. So I'd already formed lots of impressions, and I had one idea of the things that I was very drawn to and very interested in. And then when I came back, knowing that I was going to have to write about some of it, I responded quite differently, and I started to notice hidden things and maybe things that I'd overlooked a little bit before. I ended up being drawn to, firstly, some pieces of art that were really immediately striking when you look round the show, like Stuart Whipp's work, which I'm standing in front of now, a kind of blackened mini car called The Kipper and the Corpse, which is this car from Longridge, and it's about the decline of industry in the UK, or the manufacturing industry. So I was very drawn to that because that's a theme that I'm quite interested in a lot of my poems as well. I've written a lot about the Thatcher era and the miners' strike, for instance. So I wrote a piece about other things that happened in 1979 that was inspired by his work. There was also drawn to a piece downstairs in the gallery called The Eyes, which is this amazing carpet-based kind of really multicoloured, very bright piece, which has also had some dance inspired by it. There's a dance performance featuring Yorkshire dance. So I was thinking about the idea of paintings having eyes that follow you around the room, and how that could apply to a sculpture as well, and to something that was made out of fabric. And then I wrote two more pieces about other things. One of them is also visible in this room, actually. It's the panels up there, which are panels from underground trains. It's the effect of the paint on them makes it look like blood under a microscope. And so I got really interested in the idea of how we relate to people in cities, and how we can get very suspicious of strangers and perhaps afraid of what they might see in us. So I was thinking about intimacy, I suppose, with that one. Yeah. And then finally I wrote a really short piece about some of the interesting work that's on the wall upstairs, these fragments that are on display, working with different mediums, and some of them use fabric, and there's a sleeve on its own on the wall. I thought that was really curious and interesting, so I tried to write a really short piece that distilled some of how I reacted to that when I first saw it as well. I think that one of the reasons that I always really enjoy writing poems that are a response to visual art is that I hope if people read them or hear them, it might encourage them to ask more questions, perhaps. I think when I look at visual art, I'm often wondering about a story, or the story behind it, perhaps. Not the artist's story, but how somebody might look at it and find their own narrative, maybe. So that's how I try to approach them. That's kind of what all of this is about, is encouraging people to form their own question. I really like the idea that everyone has their own personal narrative, and so that's what makes an exhibition like this live, really. And so if you can sort of ripple out from that, if you can create another piece of art that people might then reflect on, it might take them back to the original, then that's just another way of interacting with it, I guess. I think art is a conversation when it's at its best, and so we're just adding to that conversation with what we're doing.